Hello and welcome to the first episode of the season for the Digital Den podcast. I'm joined by Hannah Miley, six-time gold medalist, 14-time silver medalist in the Commonwealth Games, and 16-time bronze medalist as well. World champion and more. Thank you for joining the podcast, Hannah. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling all right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. So you've won 36 medals in your career. How does that feel?
Um, Kind of running out of places to put the medals, but it feels good. It's nice to have, I guess, medals to showcase the efforts. Anybody who's involved in sport, it's very relentless and can be very unforgiving. You put a lot of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears into it. So all the amount of hours, days, months, weeks, years you put into training, all for that one moment to get that medal. It does make it all worth it. So yeah, I've learned a lot over my career. Having the medals has been awesome, but also the message for me, it's not just about the medals. It is about the hard work, the effort, being able to rise back up when things are not going so well, and making the most of the opportunities. So yeah.
So in that career so far, when did your career start?
Um, well, I guess I first got introduced to swimming when I was like 3 years old. It was my dad who first threw me in the water. He wanted myself and my two younger brothers to be safe around water. So I kind of first got my first taste of being in water from a very young age. Joined the swimming club, Geary, when I was 6, and I just stayed part of that. I had lots of other clubs that I was part of, extra school activities. I just felt so much more at home in water. So I guess my career didn't really start officially until I was maybe like 15, 16. That was when I was starting to make international teams for Great Britain for juniors, European Junior Championships when I was 15 for GB, the Commonwealth Youth Games for Scotland when I was 14. So the bracket between 14 and 16 was when I kind of realized, okay, this is kind of cool. Getting to miss school, travel the world, see different countries and race, quite a few tough swimmers as well. And from there, I kind of thought, I'd love this opportunity to let's just see where it goes. So yeah, so it was from about the age of 14 to 16 was when I decided to take the step and make it more of a career.
So my role as an MSYP is to try and make sure that people in or young people in my constituency are getting involved with the sports people and getting involved with sports and getting involved with things to hear get their voice out there. You said that you joined or you professionally or officially started your career maybe 15 or 16. How did you like switch that gear from doing it from a hobby that you love to taking it the step up and doing it professionally and making a career out of it?
Um, you know how the saying goes that, if you get a job and you enjoy your job, you never have to work a day in your life, because if you enjoy what you do, and for me, I never really saw my swimming as a job or as a career. For me, it was just something that I loved doing. I love being in the water. I was hugely competitive. And I love setting myself goals and working towards trying to make improvements in any area that I could. And I'm not typically a swimmer shape. I'm quite small. A lot of swimmers tend to be really broad. We're like spatulas, really wide, turn us sideways, and we're really like narrow. So for me, I didn't really fit that mold, and I loved it. And for me, it was about the hard work, the effort, the intent, and just that sheer grit. I do have quite a competitive streak about me. Even in school, it was like, here's homework, right? I've got to try and get the best score possible in this homework, or I've got to hand in my homework first. I always turned everything into like a competitive side. Um, but sport meant a lot to me. It really taught me a lot of values, and I never really realized how important that was as a career as such. I guess now I've called it my career looking back, but at the time I never really saw it as a career. I just saw it this as an opportunity. As I say, you get to, miss school because, I've got a competition over in Hungary. I've got to miss 2 weeks of school. It was pretty cool doing that. Obviously, making sure I stayed on top of my homework, but meeting different people, exploring different countries or cultures, it brought so much to my life that I never really thought, had I not taken up sport, would I have been able to have traveled as much or have met the people that I have met. So sports certainly has enriched me, and I can now say it's a career. As I say, at the time, I didn't think of it as a career. I just thought it was something that I loved, and opportunity wise.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to miss 2 weeks, I think you said 2 weeks of school, each competition, travel around the world. So, how many places have you been to?
Oh, good grief, a lot. I think the only place I haven't been to is South Africa. That's probably the only
Ooh.
continent I've not, Africa in general, I've not been to as a continent. I've been to Australia. That was one of my first competitions away with the Commonwealth Youth Games, was in Bendigo. So that was extreme. It was during my 5th year at school. So I was having hires. It was towards the end of my standard grades going into my 5th year. So taking
Mm.
homework away from me and jet lag. Oh, I didn't expect jet lag to hit you that hard. Traveling to America as well, again, sort of, time zones, just everything just larger than life. You ask for
Mm.
something small and you get a massive plate of food. Recently in Rio, the Olympic Games, Beijing in China, like there's been so many countries, I really can't count how many places I've been to, but there have been some amazing places. You don't get to explore too much, so I can tell you all the hotels and swimming pools that we've been to. um Sometimes it is very rare we do get to explore, but it makes me realize, if I made a little bucket list, if I was to go back and explore these places, there are certain places that I'd love to go back and kind of take advantage of exploring them a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Australia, how hot was that?
Do you know what? It was actually freezing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was really cold. I was so confused. So it was March. So it was like in their, I guess it was the end of their summer, well, kind of coming into their autumn time. And for us, it was coming into spring. So, we've kind of the
Mm.
seasonal changes with the North Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. And it was outdoors. And I just remember being so cold when the sun wasn't out. As soon as the sun was out, I mean, we had to lather ourselves up in factor 50, and, being very pale skinned as well, I burned really easily. So, I was always in the shade. And as soon as you're in the shade, it was just cold. I mean, obviously, once the sun was out, it was warm. But I'll never forget when we did our heat swim in the mornings, the preliminary rounds, going back to our accommodation, and there was a fire pit, and we actually had to put logs on and sit around with our jumpers and duvets around this fire pit. And I thought, no one's going to believe me saying that I was cold in Australia. But yeah, when the sun did get out in the middle of the day, like it did get very warm. And again, just kind of dealing with that, making sure I'd stayed safe in the sun. But yeah, and the coldest place I've been to was St. Petersburg. 2012, I went to Russia in December, and it was minus 27. So, I've gone from extremes of being in the extreme heat to the extreme cold. So yeah.
Wow. I mean, Australia hot cold. That's yeah.
Not what I
So
expected.
yeah, yeah, I can imagine. So we've been in lockdown for I think 3-4 months now. How have you been coping? Because I know as an athlete, you need to be constantly training, keeping your form up, keeping your agility, so on and so on. How have you been able to get a hold of that?
It's been difficult. I mean, this whole year has been very, very difficult. Even when we first went into lockdown in March last year, from March through to July, I didn't have any access to any swimming training. And that's the hardest bit, because swimming is, I think it's possibly one of the most unforgiving sports. It's a medium that we don't really have much access to. And I was so jealous of those who were runners or cyclists, because they could still maintain some form of training outdoors. Whereas swimming, there's only so much you can do in a bath.
Yeah.
And it was very, very difficult. I did try a little bit of open water swimming, opened my eyes a lot, especially around the safety aspects. I didn't realize and took for granted actually how important it is to make sure that it is 100% safe where you go to swim, who you tell, the equipment that you need. And again, just like health risks, do you try not go the day after raining, and make sure the weather's right and the water temperature, you got cold water shock. So there's so much to take on board. And I struggled. I tried to swim in the North Sea sort of in March,
Wow.
and the water temperature was 4 degrees, and I didn't cope very well. So I thought this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So we just had to rely on Zoom workouts and just working on different little bits. So I tried to find ways of, okay, need to maintain like mobility and flexibility. A little bit of exercise each day I felt, was really good, gave me routine. But it was hard. It was very, very difficult. Some swimmers I saw got themselves paddling pools, filled it up with water, and then had a bungee cord hold them in one spot, and they were able to swim. I live in a top floor flat, so sadly I don't have the space or the garden space to do that. But some people were being very inventive for it. So yeah, it was just trying to maintain my fitness as best I could and know that, everybody's in the same position. So, it was just do what I can to keep myself as active as I can and try and avoid any injuries.
Mm.
Luckily, I was in an elite group that was allowed to get back in the water from middle of July. And I've been able to stay in training. I had surgery on my shoulder in October, which did take me back out of the water again, but I've been able to get back in again. So, I feel very grateful and very privileged to have the opportunity to still get back in the water. But it's certainly given me a different perspective on the importance of, just maintaining that mobility, flexibility, and just keeping your body moving, not just for your physical health, but for mental health as well. Because I suffered quite a fair bit with it. You train for 4-year cycles going into Olympic Games, and each day that I'm out the water, I was just watching all that hard work get chipped away, and that was hard. That was really mentally tough, knowing that all that work just felt like it was going to waste. So getting out and about, my dog was probably my best friend throughout the whole of lockdown. She was amazing. She forced me to get out for the walks, especially when I felt I had days where I just I was just so fed up. She had to go out for a walk, so she taught me to keep going with exercise, and that made a big difference for me.
Yeah.
So it's been tough, but thinking outside the box and being brave and challenging myself in different ways. There's lots of individuals out there offering help, support, and I try to sort of do the same and offer help and support for other young swimmers. So yeah,
I can imagine, because Olympics are the big one that you work your way up to over the past 4 years. In the Olympics, looking at your stats here, you came for representing Great Britain. You in 2008 you came sixth. In 2012, you came fifth, and in 2016 you came fourth. It shows your progress that you keep climbing up a pole position. So I think the next one has to be top three. It has to be.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like you go any Olympic Games, if you get to go, it is such a spectacle, and only the top 3 in the world ever get to be on the podium. So it's such a scrabble to try and put your hand on the wall first. And I was 1500ths of a second away from that in Rio. So that was both a blessing and a curse, because 4th position was the best position I'd ever been in. It was one of the best times I'd ever been in, but I was just so agonizingly close to that medal. So coming into Tokyo, like whether I get to make the team or not, I don't know. I've still got to go through that process to see if I can qualify. But for me, I realized that just being part of the team has just been so exceptional and just so phenomenal. I really love being part of the whole Team GB process. And winning a medal is any athlete's dream, but sometimes we're lucky enough to win them and sometimes we're not. But it's not the end of the world. I'm very proud to have said that I've represented Team GB for 3 Olympic Games, made finals for 3 Olympic Games as well. So we'll see how it goes for the 4th one.
Yeah, all eyes on that one. You talked about
Yes.
lockdown. You talked about lockdown being quite hard. I know for myself, Netflix is almost like my best friend. So did you have anything on Netflix that you were binge watching, or anything that you had your eyes on, whether it's Netflix or other streaming services?
Oh, just loads of stuff. I got to the point where you get almost bored, but you just
Yeah.
think, oh, well, what now? You get really hooked into a season, and then as soon as it ends, or I've started noticing, especially on Amazon Prime, they get you hooked on a season, and then when you come to the last season, you have to pay for the last season, and you're like, no. So we went through, I think it was at Chicago Med. We went and watched all of the season of House as well. We got Disney Plus, so started going through all the Disney, the animated, all the Disney movies. Some of the new ones that came out, like Soul and Onward.
Good movies, yeah.
Um, Caught up on like Bake Off as well, Bake Off the Professionals, Junior Bake Off. Because we ended up we actually didn't get a TV license because we watch so much stuff on like Netflix or Amazon Prime. We don't really watch live TV.
Mm,
So yeah, it was just trying to catch up on like lots of TV series. So
mm.
each night, I think it was mainly just House and Chicago Med. It was a very medical themed kind of lockdown, I think. But we tried to sort of make sure we weren't too much involved in front of the TV. So for me, training my dog, doing dog tricks with her kind of kept us entertained as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I remember the first time when they announced schools were closing, so on and so on. And at first it felt like it was amazing. I'm speaking for myself, but I can only imagine how it felt for you. So it felt like amazing. School off, get to plan your whole day, maybe leave things up to like the last day, and then you get it done, and then you can whether go on Xbox or text and so on and so on, do other stuff like that. But I think on the first day, I was looking back at my photos, and I realized that I commented on something, first day in lockdown, and I'm already bored. How's the first day for you?
I think I saw one post and it said, first day on lockdown, just been to the supermarket, got all my food, got my snacks. 5 minutes later, I've eaten half of my food. For me, it just felt like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, it was difficult. And I think it was just the routine factor, because when you've got school, you know what time you need to wake up when you've got school. And yeah, it can be a little bit of a drag, but it gets you through the day. It's like that sense of purpose. So as an athlete, not having that routine of when training is, when you're eating, when you're kind of recovering, it takes a couple of days to get into it, but then obviously not knowing if the Olympics are going ahead or not. And it's like, well, if I'm training, what am I training for? So it's trying to find that sense of purpose. So yeah, I had to kind of sit down and write down a couple of, things that I could control, things that I couldn't control, just to kind of get my headspace right. But yeah, there were times where I was incredibly bored. But as I say, my puppy, well, she's a year now, so she was very much a puppy.
Mm,
During lockdown, she kept me
yeah.
very busy. And yeah, I kind of put a lot of my focus. So I was didn't get bored that often because of her. She made me laugh, and she forced me to go out for walks. And yeah, it was really good fun. She taught me an awful lot. She was probably my biggest teacher during
Mm.
lockdown.
I mean, in lockdown, I know one of the things that I tried to get into is either learning an instrument or baking. I know I got myself into that. I needed to go on a diet, and quite soon after I realized. But yeah, have you learned any instruments or anything in lockdown, or have you learned? Do you know any instruments? Do you play any?
I used to play the piano, but again, because I live in a top floor flat, I've not been able to play the piano for quite some time. I've not
Yeah.
been able to get them up the stairs. But I, for me, it was more like a physical challenge. I really struggled doing like single leg squats. So I worked on trying to get myself to do a single leg squat or pistol squat unassisted. And it's taken me a long time to get the mobility, the flexibility, and the strength to do that. So yes, I learned how to do the pistol squat. I did try a little bit of baking, but again, it was great fun, but very dangerous. Just with the amount of sugar I think I kind of went through. And I keep going back to my dog. Like for me, I had a dog as with my family, but for myself and my partner, she was our first like
Yeah.
our own personal dog. So becoming like almost like a dog trainer and teaching her tricks and trying to teach her to do little things like I can ask her to, she has a blanket to get up on the sofa, so I say blanket, and she now will go and run to the basket, pick up the blanket and bring it to me. I can teach her to sit pretty, so she'll sit up and like squat down, or I can ask her to cross her paws and she'll cross her paws, or I can ask her to pack my swimming bag and she will pack my swimming bag. So it's actually been really good fun
Yeah.
teaching her. And that for me has kind of been, I guess, my own skill, because I love working with animals and I've always, enjoyed watching lots of animal programs. But to actually work with Poppy, for you 24/7 on lots of different things and to make it fun for her, but fun for me, I learned an awful lot on communication, how to, set her up for success, And if she doesn't, if she fails at something, it's to learn from it and then move on, and not to get cross or angry with her or frustrated. It's never her fault. I've got to try and rework my teaching. So I learned that a lot about myself as well. And yeah, there's just been a couple of other little bits, like even sitting down, kind of coloring in. So I guess I didn't actively go out saying, right, I'm going to try and learn this new skill. Apart from the pistol squat, I kind of just took on different challenges as much as I could. I started creating little challenges as well. I did like the toilet roll challenge where you have to drop the toilet roll from behind your head and try and catch it between your legs. I enjoyed setting up those little things as well, just to try and keep people engaged and have fun with it. You have no idea how many times I had to try to get that toilet roll challenge done.
I saw
Oh my
I saw
goodness.
when you celebrated yours.
Yeah, we completely missed the high five as well. That was a task and a half. But yeah, apologies, I rambled on that question.
No, it's fine. I mean, you've talked about swimming and your dog being a key part. Would you ever look into, if you weren't a swimmer, maybe veterinary work, or something to do with animals, working with animals?
Yeah, I so wanted to be a vet, and I was kind of at that decision before I decided to stick with swimming, with do I pursue veterinary like as my main career. And I so wanted to work with animals. I've watched all the veterinary programs and got all the books, and the only bit that I was really struggling to get was obviously the work experience, because with training it was very difficult to find the time to go and actively work at farms, go and shadow vets at the clinics. So I still have a huge passion for working with animals, but for me, I think I would use it more as a hobby than actually make it as a career. And yeah, animal hydrotherapy for me combines the two things that I love: water and animals, helping animals and using water as a source of healing. That would be the ultimate dream. Have two training pools, one to help train young swimmers and another one to help fix animals.
Yeah,
that would be awesome. But yeah, I can see myself as an individual that will have more than just one dog.
yeah.
And for me, that it doesn't have to be a career. It's just a hobby, something that I love, something that I enjoy, and just to give back and help to the animal world as best I can. So yeah.
So you've talked again about swimming and so on, and your career with that. I believe you used to train at Inverurie Swimming Centre. So
No, I actually moved in 2016. So after the Olympic Games, I moved to Aberdeen, and I now train at the University of Aberdeen swim performance team. So I actually now train at the new 50-meter pool. But every now and then I did sometimes go back and train at the pool in Inverurie.
So Inverurie Academy now, I think it's merged with, I think I go to school there, but it's merged with the swimming pool, and it's like this massive new building.
Community
So
campus.
yeah, you got hydrotherapy pool and so on and so on. So it's quite good there to bring back
Yep.
on the memories. Do you remember what were your best memories training at the swimming centre before it was knocked down, before you moved?
Yeah, for me it was a tough training pool because it was 4 lanes, 25 meters, and it would get very wavy, almost like swimming in the North Sea. So it wasn't always the easiest conditions, but for me, I loved it because it challenged me quite a lot. And it just felt like home. Like for me, I didn't need a big fancy facility. I had my coach, I had my teammates, and I have the water. That was all I needed. So it made me appreciate when you do get to the bigger swimming pools and the fancier facilities, you think, oh, this water is really nice and smooth. Oh, I have space. And for me, that pool taught me an awful lot about myself as an individual, about make do with what you've got, work with what you've got. And just because it's not a fancy facility doesn't mean that it has to be ignored or thrown out. It still can work. There'll be some days where you turn up and maybe the thermostat was maybe a wee bit high, so it was hot water, so we had to adapt our training. So you always had to be thinking on your toes depending on what the sort of conditions were. But for me, I loved it. I loved training in that pool. It took me to 3 Olympic Games, so I can't knock it. I have very fond memories, and I was very sad when I found out they were closing. I've asked if they could give me one of the tiles so that I could remember the pool by. But at the same time, the upgrade I think was definitely needed for Inverurie. It's, you know, a fast growing town, and I definitely think that they needed the space. So yeah, so the new facility that they've got is fantastic. I was very lucky enough to have gotten a little swim in it before it fully opened. So yeah, it definitely is night and day compared to the other one. But I
Yeah.
still love the other one. It, you know, for me, it gave me the Rocky effect.
Yeah, the memories, bringing back the memories. You back on the lockdown topic, did you, or no, not in lockdown actually, but in general, do you have like a favorite treat or snack that you like to snack on every now and then, and then?
Oh yeah. I have a food like for me, salt and vinegar crisps and Haribo. They are
Oh,
dangerous
Ariel.
for me. Like I can sit and eat through a whole bag of salt and vinegar crisps. My mouth will be on fire, but I just will keep eating them. Like there is, I think is it Aldi? They've got like a really strong flavored salt and vinegar crisps there that I just love. And yeah, I could quite easily devour and demolish Haribo. Not so keen on chocolate,
Mm.
but those are kind of like my two weaknesses, I guess. So yeah, definitely sweet treats are kind of my guilty pleasure.
Have you got any advice for young swimmers, people who are looking into swimming? Because I know some of my constituents are quite keen on swimming. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, there's quite a few. So swimming, as I say, is one of the toughest sports, but I think if you enjoy it, that's the main thing. You know, even at the minute without being in the water, it's been so amazing seeing how many people have been inventive in trying to find ways to still stay part of a team, you know, get involved and keep fit. It's a sport that stays with you for life. You know, you learn how to swim and you won't ever forget it. So definitely look after yourself mentally, you know, be kind to yourself, because swimmers, we can be very tough on ourselves. We do a lot of hard work and sometimes we don't get the results that we want to get. So we think, oh, we're not good enough. That's not, you know, you need to be better. Sometimes we need to be take a step back and just be kind. Look at the little things, not just the numbers at the end. Doesn't matter how fast you've gone. Did you achieve your processes? Did you achieve the small goals that you set yourself? Those are the important things. Like build it up, and the times will come. So definitely younger swimmers coming into it, enjoy it. You know, have fun. The fundamental parts, the first three letters. The mental part will come later. And yeah, and be kind to yourself. You know, whether you win, whether you don't come first, or you know, make a final or don't make a final, don't beat yourself up. It's only swimming, and you can learn something from it. There will always be a positive part to that swim, so try and find the positives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hope that
Uh,
makes sense.
yeah, makes perfect sense to me. So you've gone to all these different places in the world. Do you have like a favorite place? Maybe once you've finished or you've decided to retire, hopefully a long time away. But when you decided to retire, do you have like an idea of where you want to say, I'm going to go on vacation there, enjoy the place, instead of focusing on the competition and trying to win another medal?
Yeah. There's actually two places that I would love to go back and visit more. The first one is Italy. Just pizza and ice cream, amazing over there. But just the weather there, like architecture is just fascinating. There's so much history there. And yeah, just the freshness of the food, like, is so good. So Italy, especially, and Canada. I love Canada. I went there in November and I've done a couple of competitions there. And for me, it feels a little bit like home. It feels a little bit like Scotland, but obviously the weather's a wee bit nicer in that when it's warm, it's warm. But however, their winters are pretty severe as well. But I feel it's got all the nice bits of America and it doesn't have all the advertisements being thrown down your face. So the scenery in Canada is just stunning. So the dream would be to hire like an RV or a camper van and just tour around and kind of explore Canada as best I can. And yeah, and just find those like little secret spots, whether it's lakes, waterfalls, you know, the mountains. And for me, even in lockdown when we were able to travel a little bit more, that's kind of what I did in Scotland. And for me, I just loved, you know, looking on our back doorstep and finding lakes, rivers, waterfalls, and all that. But yeah, Canada and Italy are the two countries that I would love to go back on and do a vacation there at some point.
Great. You said the pizza's quite nice. Were you able to try the pizza and the ice cream when you went to compete there?
Yes, we did. So it's normally the last day of competition. Obviously, leading in and during competition, no. But on the last day, when you know that you're flying home the next day, yeah, we got to try some, and it's just so good. Like, because everything is just so freshly made. Like,
Yeah.
the tomatoes are grown there, the olive oil is made there, like the dough is handmade. Like, there's the freshness of it, and it's like the proper thin, crispy bases. And you just don't feel heavy afterwards. Like, it's just amazing. And there's so many different flavors and different toppings you can have. I remember getting the menu, and there was like 4 or 5 different pages of just pizza. So yeah, it was pretty spectacular. And as I say, the ice cream is also just very, very nice. It's not too sweet. It doesn't feel really sugary. It just feels so like natural and just fresh, which is just nice.
So some sports stars have someone who is key in them getting to the sport. Do you have anyone who's like who's your role model, or anyone who supported you as you got into swimming?
There's probably two individuals, possibly a couple of more, but my dad, he was the first person that introduced me to swimming, and he has been my coach ever since he got me involved in swimming. And I'd say my family as well, they've been my biggest support throughout the whole thing. Two younger brothers were great training partners, and my mum, I guess she was kind of like my team manager. She certainly, kept me sane and kept my dad sane as well when we were going through like any tough times with competitions. And she taught me a lot of my independence, washing up, cooking, and all that. So I owe a lot to my mum. And just being there as well, just on the tough days or even the good days, she was just a sounding board for me. And then Misty Hyman, a girl called Misty, she caused one of the biggest upsets at the Olympic Games in 2000, the Sydney Olympics, 200 meters butterfly, and you can watch her swim on YouTube. And it wasn't just so much like her swim. Like, a lot of people think, oh, it's because she won the gold, but it wasn't. It was just who she was an individual. They introduced each of the swimmers, lane 1 to 8. Everybody had their goggles on, serious faces, focused, in the zone and looking at the end of their lane. And Misty was the only one who had the massive grin on her face, like waving to the crowd, loving every second of it. And I instantly thought, that's an Olympic final. And I thought, if you've worked so hard to the point where all you've got left to do is to enjoy the moment, I thought that's such a cool place to be. So
Yeah.
for me, she taught me a lot on the enjoyment of doing what you do is really, really important. And just the fact that she's just such a kind, genuine person. So for me, she really inspired and aspired me to be the person that I am today. She takes her sport very seriously. She worked at the little details. She thought outside the box with her coach. They were kind of looking at fish for their underwater work to kind of try and translate it to their underwater work. And for me, I feel it's quite similar between myself and my dad. And yeah, and I just fell in love with her personality and who she was as an individual. So she was my sort of swimming inspiration. But my dad and my family were my huge inspiration for support and for getting me through it all and being on the journey with me.
Yeah. You worked so hard for 4 years to get to that final moment where it all matters, where your training really takes a seat, a front seat in how you perform. Do you have any favorite training things to do when you train, or things to keep your head in the game as you're on the track ready to run that, or not run, swim, sorry.
You should see me run. It's like watching a penguin trying to run. um, yeah, music for me. Music's like a really big part for helping me just get into that headspace to try and block out the noise, try and, zone in and ignore the distractions and all the other noisy bits that can kind of go on. And just gets the adrenaline going, gets my, I don't want to say hype because I feel that's such an overused word when it comes to sport and music. It's not so much it gets me hyped up, but it just makes you feel you're invincible. Like, if you get a really good track or a really good song, and it just gets you feel so many different emotions with it. So for me, I really use music to help me feel the emotions that I want to feel before a race, which is excited, focused, energized, and happy. I want to have music that makes me feel happy as well. So my music taste is very eclectic. Like it's such a wide range. I range from like instrumental only to some rap to some dance, electronic, pop. Like it's anything and everything apart from heavy metal or screamer music. That's probably the only two genres that I haven't quite agreed with me yet. But yeah, definitely, even if I'm having a day where I feel like I'm struggling mentally, it's like, in the winter it's dark and you're like, oh, I've got to get back up, turn the radio on before I get to the pool, try and find a good music, or put my phone in and plug in like my sort of go-to playlist, and that'll keep me going. And then you've just got that tune as well, a tune that you like that's going to stay in your head, because if you got a tune that you don't like and it's stuck in your head, it's a nightmare. So yes, I guess it can be a bit of a blessing and a curse when it comes to music. But yeah, music's definitely my go-to if I feel like, I need help to kind of get me in the zone, or need help to calm me down, or help just to kind of make me feel good.
Mm. Do you have so when you're like in the days leading up to a swim, like a big one, whether it's a championship, a Commonwealth, or an Olympic, how do you get yourself ready for it? Do you have any special preparations? Do you um, do anything in particular? Do you have like a go-to phrase, or like a superstition that you get into?
I was going to say a lot of athletes will call this their superstitions. For me, it's packing my bag. Like it's the night before. So for me, I have this routine of opening up my bag, there's nothing in it, and it's like, right, get my racing cap, goggles, swimsuit, spare racing cap, goggles, swimsuit, towel, clothes to keep me warm, food. How many races am I doing? Do I need 2 gels? Do I need 3 cereal bars? Recovery food, compressions for recovery. And so for me, that's sort of like tick box process of all the things that I need for the day. And I always overpack. My bag always ends up being far too much, but I rather overpack than be like, oh, I wish I had that, or oh, I've forgotten that. So yeah, I always try and make sure that I cover all my bases for any scenarios and pack that bag. So for me, just that in itself helps get me in the zone and the mindset before a competition. Um, Normally, a couple of days beforehand, I'll try and look at, again, different bits of food that I need to take with me. I start making my list. So I try and like write on my phone in my notes. I start noting down the things I need to take. And then when it comes to the day of packing, I can check off and know that by the end of it, I've not got that mad scramble of, oh, I've forgotten this, I need to put that in. So it's kind of a methodical thing for me, that packing my bag.
So when we talk about swimming as a whole, have you? I'm sure you've looked at like the swimming greats, the people who remind you or have or are like role models for you in the competition. Do you have any role models in the sport that you you rate?
Yeah, so of Misty Hyman, I guess as a swimmer was one of my role models. And I guess any swimmer, because I do feel, you know the hard work and effort that goes into it. So anybody that you compete against, like I hugely admire. And I do hugely admire the distance swimmers as well, because it always tends to be like they're always the first in, last out. The mileage that they have to put in is huge. But then I also am in awe of the sprinters, because I would love to sprint. I've only got one little fast twitch fiber that lives in my little pink toe. But it's, and just the power and the sort of how strong they look, and just the effortlessness when they go in and swim is just incredible. So yeah, I hugely admire any swimmer that wants to take it to the next level and take it on as a career, and those that are brave enough to step outside the norm, those that are brave enough to challenge themselves, maybe do a couple of events back to back, or do events that maybe they're not strong at but still try and perform. um, yeah, there's a lot of great swimmers that have made history. As I say, Misty Hyman is one of them. She caused one of the biggest upsets at the games. A girl called Katinka Hosu, who I've raced against since I was 15. She's gone on to become a phenomenal athlete known as the Iron Lady. She's very, very tough. You've got Matt Biondi, you've got Pablo Morales, Michael Phelps, Ryan Lochte. Like, there's so many names out there that some people might be going, huh, who's that? But if you're a swimmer, you might know who they are. So it's good fun. You do find these incredible athletes that just have their own story, their own journey to get to where they need to be. um yeah, I hugely admire that.
You talked about when you go 2 weeks off. When you were in school, you went 2 weeks off to Hungary and different places around the world to participate in those competitions. How did you cope with exams? I think a lot of young people will be quite interested to see how you were able to fit in exams and then competitions and then your own personal life into
Yeah.
that quite testing time.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily the exams, it was more the homework. Trying to stay on top of homework was really, really challenging. And whenever I went away, my dad would always write a letter to the school to ask permission to inform them that I was going away, and then also to add any teachers that would like to give extra homework, please do. And I was like, no, don't do that. But actually, it was probably one of the best things for me because it made me stay on top of things, and I could always stay in touch with the teachers via email. Um, the way that the only way I could get around it was by creating a timetable. So basically managing like each day, scheduling in when I was training, when I would have my breakfast, my school day, lunch times, any opportunity I saw to do studying or to catch up on homework, I would then find it in my timetable and do it. So when I would go away, I would always try and make sure that I took away enough textbooks and enough, pay notebooks with me to do like any working out or make sure I got through the homework. And then I would take because I didn't have a laptop at the time. So, I'd always try and find ways of being able to either scan or email my homework, or sometimes you'd have computers at the hotel that you have to pay like €1 an hour or something like that. And then I would have to type everything up and email it to my teacher. So communicating with my teachers if I needed help as well was really important. So if there were times that I was struggling, when I came back from my time away, trying to see if I could meet up with a teacher at lunchtime. So it did impact, I guess, on my social life a little bit because I was either swimming or studying. But I was very lucky enough that I had some friends who understood and, were really respectful, that they knew I had to get through the work. And what we did was we try and plan in when we could meet up. So if there was something that I couldn't attend because I wasn't here, we'd be like, okay, well, let's try and arrange for when you are here to try and meet up and do something there. So as I say, I was very lucky enough to have some individuals who were, quite responsive to that, and never made me feel like I was missing out. It's still teething problems, and I guess for them, they were quite heavily into music and art, so I guess they had their own hobbies. For me, swimming at the time was probably seen as a hobby, just a very intense one. So I think they understood in that sense that, okay, I'm not here because I'm competing or I'm training. For them, it was like, oh, well, we're away, to perform at a theatre or for practice. So yeah, timetables, communicating with the teachers, and not being afraid that if you are stuck and not understanding it, asking for help. And pretty much a lot of my lunch times after I had lunch, I would spend in the library. Quite a lot of people used to make fun of me for that, but I wanted to get my homework done because for me, as soon as I finished and I was given the homework, it was fresh in my mind. So I would just get it done there and then, and that allowed me to kind of stay on top of it. And as I say, if I felt I was still struggling, meeting up with teachers in my lunch break as well, to kind of go through other little bits, just helped me mentally get through it. So yeah, so those are kind of the bits. And teething problems, it didn't always sort of work out. There were some days where there were some bits I did struggle with, but it's making sure that you always ask for help when you need it, because I guess the teachers won't know you need it unless you ask for it.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on the podcast. I've just got one more question for you, a little task, a little test actually. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to try and find anything around your flat any object that you think represents you. So you've got 30 seconds to rummage anywhere, bring up an object, go to the camera, and the time starts in 3, 2, 1.
It's a lot harder than I thought.
15.
All right. Oh, no, not that one. Let's go here. There we go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ta-da.
Perfectly on time.
So this is a memory bear. I wouldn't say I'm kind of well, I am a cuddly kind of person, but my memory bear is made up of lots of different bits and pieces from my journey. And I feel for me as an individual, I am the person that I am today from all the different memories and experiences that I've had, whether it's been good or bad. It all patchwork together. It's who I am as an individual. My little memory bear sits and observes my room. I like to sit and observe my swimming, what I'm doing. I'm quite a visual person. I love bright colors. And yeah, I don't have a name for him. I do need a name for him, but that's probably the best one. That's the only thing I could think of in my room.
A great object to pick. So that is a wrap for the podcast. A special thanks to Hannah Miley, 36-time gold or 36-time medalist in Commonwealth, soon to be the Olympics and other championships around the world. Be sure to follow and subscribe on our platforms: Spotify, Google Play, Apple Music, YouTube, and SoundCloud, searching the Digital Den podcast. Thank you for joining us, Hannah.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. And then I'll just stop.